Hey, manufacturing world. Welcome to another episode of Okuma Shop Matters, the podcast. My name is Brandon Glenn. I'm Director of Sales at Okuma America in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I have with me today here Chris Peluso. Chris is with Sandvik Coromant, a world-class cutting tool company. And you guys are also based here out of North Carolina, am I right?
Mebane, North Carolina, about an hour up the road.
So formerly out of New Jersey, but they've since moved their North American headquarters here to North Carolina. So RCR, as you can see, that's where we're at today. We'll talk in a minute about why we're here at RCR for the podcast. But if you look on the map, Charlotte, Mebane, and RCR is literally right in the middle. So great place for us to meet. And RCR is, as you all know, world-class racing operation based out of Lexington, North Carolina. Probably some great names from years past that you know, namely Dale Earnhardt. Really put them on the map, and that number 3 car brand still stands for itself in a lot of ways. But Okuma has been the machine tool partner of RCR for almost 25 years now. So in the grand scheme of things, that's one of the longest standing partnerships that RCR has had continuously through that period of time. And it's really been a win-win. I'll talk a little bit more about the history of that partnership. Because it really has brought value to both parties, but I think it's brought value to the manufacturing world as a whole, and I'll give you a few examples of that. I actually came out of the NASCAR racing world myself many years ago, and it was very clear from the early days of my career that these NASCAR teams, they're not just race teams, they are full-blown world-class engineering firms, and they just happen to make race cars. But if they stop making race cars tomorrow, they could very quickly be making space equipment or aerospace or you name it.
Well, and they are, right?
Well, now they are, yeah. So the world has changed a little bit. At the genesis of when CNC machines were introduced to the NASCAR world, it was the mid-90s. I just learned today that RCR got their first CNC machine back in 1995. So 30 years ago, it's hard to believe. And that first machine was a horizontal machining center, and it actually has a 4th axis built into it, and then they had a 5th axis rotary table on top of that. Pretty advanced stuff for 1995, really. I can't even imagine how they were reverse engineering and programming some of the cylinder head contours back then.
And I think that's the key here is it's about collaboration and innovation.
Yep.
Right? Those are two things that are paramount to Sandvik Coromant and Okuma, right? And I can speak to that, and just seeing the things that we've produced in the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. Specifically, I think most focus is on that is the machine adapted clamping units that we built for your Multis products and LB products that are now outfitted to be tool changed by robots.
Yeah.
Right? The Capto interchange, which is in a lot of the multitasking spindles, allows for that high repeatability and high torque transmission as well as tool changeability. And now we're starting to apply that to turret lathes, which people were hoping for it 5 years ago, but nobody was doing it 5 years ago. And those are coming to customers probably by the end of next month.
That's cool, yeah. And we'll dig deeper on all that stuff that you just mentioned, but I think it is in this manufacturing world, when we do it right, we all help each other to get better. The machine tool builders will build a product that helps you push your tooling harder and faster. And then you got end users like RCR and others who are figuring out new and innovative ways to process and automate and a million different other things. And so we all hold each other accountable to up our game if we do it right.
Yeah, especially as they move to different products, right? Maybe aerospace materials that they're not used to machining, they now need different grades to produce things, and they got to run faster, they got to push their machines harder, then they got to call back to you and say, hey, Brandon, what do we get to do this, right? The tooling guy said we can do it, but we need to have this much horsepower, so what machine do we need to do that?
Well, and having somebody to call when you got those questions, that's another part of the beauty of partnership, because no shop should have to go it alone in terms of figuring out all the pieces that go into a complete manufacturing puzzle.
Yeah, well, it's funny you bring that up. So in the last year or so, Sandvik has developed that whole concept. It's like there's so many people just thinking of not really paying attention to the world outside of them, right? So they came up with this concept, manufacturing wellness, right? It's a series of different categories where you can give yourself self-assessment and see where you stand against the rest of the manufacturing world, right? Are you prepared for some of the challenges in terms of automation or education that are out there today, or that you will need to focus on, right? And if you think you are, maybe you're not, right? A lot of, when machine tool monitoring first came out, a lot of people thought oh yeah, absolutely, we got 85% spindle uptime, and it turned out, right? We put Machine Connect on there, and we got 45%.
Yeah, it was
right?
the inverse of what they thought it was.
Exactly.
I hate it when the data tells you the truth like that.
And the wellness assessments, right, like a doctor's assessment, just kind of you answer it, right? Nobody else is telling you what your shop is like. So you reflect on yourself, and then it's some pretty honest numbers, right? And you might have to think about what you're doing in the future, right? Are you going to do something like train your employees, which our facility right up the road, we've got fantastic group of guys that actually focus 100% of their time on training, whether it's on-site or off-site. We run online classes, right? If you want to do kind of self-paced basics, I want to learn about end mills or drills or turning tools or clamping units, something like that, you can just sign on, take a module, or you can attend a 2-day class.
Yep. There's a lot of shops that I don't envy machine shops that have to make parts and have to make rate and get product out the door. That's the reason you're there. But when you've got to find new and innovative ways to do it, maybe improve efficiencies, maybe you need to buy new equipment in order to continue to make rate. That's like people's job on top of their job. My job's not to go find tooling solutions. My job's to make parts. Well, you can make parts faster if you take the time to go investigate the tooling solutions. We'll talk about that more today too, about how that time out of the shop, learning, training, investing, having relationships. Yes, it's always hard to break away from the shop and go do those things, but we'll reap the benefit of that tenfold. And you and I have seen shops that do those things, that invest that time outside of their own four walls, be more productive when they're back in their office because of what they learn.
Well, and I think companies like RCR benefit from having a machine tool partner like yourself, right? They can lean back on you and say, hey, what is it? What steps can we take? Like the Multis we had down there with the little Armoroid attached to it, right? What steps can they take to improve their process? Because they got to be so focused on production, they don't necessarily, turn on the manufacturing news and see what's out there.
So RCR started off as a machine shop dedicated to making race parts, and rightly so. And by the way, race parts by nature are usually high mix, low volume, and a whole lot of aluminum. Maybe you get some other alloys and things, but mainly aluminum. Today, the world is drastically different for them. They're doing primarily maybe 60+% outside work. They're a contract manufacturing shop. Because like I said earlier, they're an engineering firm that just happens to make race cars. Well, as the nature of the racing business has changed, they've really capitalized on their machine shop being not only a source of revenue generation, but really for solution generation, I would say. In fact, they've got a whole entity of their business called RCR Manufacturing Solutions, where they want to provide value to customers of their own, namely people in the defense sector, aerospace, space exploration, military, the list goes on. Sometimes they're doing contract manufacturing where they're making parts for people and projects and things. And then other times they're, in a way, making some of their own products to serve some of those outside industries that are non-race related. So quick plug for RCR Manufacturing Solutions. They've taken the time and effort to be AS 9100 certified, ISO 9001, they're ITAR compliant, they have their FFL, and so that stuff doesn't happen without a lot of intentionality and effort. They've done those things, and so anybody out there who's looking for a partner when it comes to the area of technical solutions, contract manufacturing, R&D, any of that, you should look up Rocky Helms, who's Vice President of Manufacturing. He would be your contact at RCR Manufacturing Solutions. But as their business has changed, I think their partnership with Okuma as a machine tool builder has really helped them stand out to some of their potential prospects and customers. And we both want to continue to grow and leverage that. Okuma uses this wonderful RCR campus and the RCR manufacturing facilities to show our customers what Okumas can do. We've done test cuts. I mean, Rocky at times has torn down an entire machine to open it up for Okuma to do a test cut for a new customer prospect. And there's a million other examples of partnership. But here's where you come in, and Sandvik Coromant specifically. Okuma has other partners, Sandvik being one of the primary ones on the tooling side of things. It's funny because if Okuma is one of the premier machine tool builders in the world, our machines never actually touch the part. Like, we don't actually cut the metal. If our machine touches the part, it's called a crash, and that's no good. So on top of a world-class machine tool, manufacturers all over the country, they have to have fantastic work holding, they have to have fantastic tooling, they have to have CAD/CAM solutions. These days, automation and total chip control and chip management is a big part of it. The list goes on. These are all pieces of the manufacturing mosaic, and you got to put them all together like a jigsaw puzzle to have a complete solution. That's where Okuma, we really appreciate our relationship with Sandvik Coromant to say, you guys are constantly bringing the best tooling solutions to the table for us and for our customers. So whenever we got challenges, we might know the best thing from a machine tool application standpoint, but we're picking up the phone calling guys like you to say, what's the best thing from the tooling standpoint? And then other people from work holding and so on and so forth. So it's the network or relationship that really makes us stronger when it comes to generating solutions.
Yeah, it really is. And the customers who benefit, as you know, I used to work for Okuma, and so now I get to come back, and currently I'm in the midst of a project where we're using a Multis to do some power skiving for a local customer. And it's because you guys have the technology in-house and we can provide the tools, because it's a machine the customer does not have, right? So they're trying to figure out, is this something that's even possible, right? Can we look down this road? At your facility in Charlotte, we're just contacted a couple of guys down there. They got tools set up, parts set up. We start running things, programming things, and lo and behold, now we're showing the customer a whole new way of making their product that they've been making for 50 years. And they start to think about, wow, we can do something different in the future. We can gain some advantage here. But it's only because you have really high quality machines and that they're available there to us, right? Yeah. It's not like, oh, you have them, but you hands off, right? Yeah. It's just for looking, no touching. It's for us to go there and play and work and understand and develop these processes and these particular tools.
Yep. Thank goodness that our companies make sandboxes like that available for us to play in. Because honestly, if I flip myself around, if I put myself in a customer's shoes and in user shoes, if I'm considering purchasing one of the premium brands in the industry, I probably want somebody to prove something to me.
Yeah,
that's too big of a risk to take otherwise. And so it's our duty to be able to prove those things. We believe that we can, but it's another thing when a customer sees that it can do what you actually said it can do. So, there was a quick story I'll tell. Many years ago, a customer was going to win a job up in eastern Pennsylvania, and it was defense related, but it was drilling holes in a very exotic material. And it was a material that was actually encapsulated in a layer of stainless steel. And he had to drill hundreds of holes in this big tombstone type of material. And he says, I need a machining center to do this, but I also need to know, what is the best drill? What's the best reamer? Like, what's my tool life going to be? If I can quantify all those things, I can go win the contract and I'll know exactly what I need to buy. So we set that up on a showroom in Charlotte, and we invited in tooling partners like Sandvik Coromant. Customer came down for 2 or 3 days, and all we did was run drills. And at the end of that 2 or 3 days, he said, you've done for me in 3 days what I could not have done for myself in 3 months. Right? And at the end of that, he did win a contract. He did buy some Okumas and some Sandvik Coromant tooling because of that. But it's because of the sandbox, and we were able to put our money where our mouth was and show what the real value to him as a manufacturer was going to be.
Well, and I think the truth is that customers want to be able to do these things, but production demands prevent them from saying, we've got to take this machine offline so that we can learn something, right? And learning is how we advance, right? Just period. So that's what having these technical centers and the technical capacity, right? We have applications guys in-house, you have applications guys in-house. We're always working towards a project end, and that's what gives the customer the advantage, is by saying, hey, please help, right? And then we can develop these things for them.
That's good. And when we do these podcasts or we talk about these topics, I hope they're always geared with the customer in mind. Like, hey, why would somebody listen to this? Or what's the value they're going to take from listening to this? We want our customers to come to us with challenges and say what you just said, please help us, because that's really what we wake up every morning trying to do. But you said something great earlier today as we were talking about how, there's expertise that a customer has about the parts, and then there's expertise on the machine, and then the tooling, and it's where the magic happens is really where we get all three of those together, right?
Yeah, it's always about collaborating, because nobody knows everything, right? It just is a matter of everybody putting their 2 cents in what they've learned and what they've gotten wrong, right? It's from our mistakes that we start to say, oh, well, here's something we can do better, right?
Yep. So Sandvik Coromant is the tooling entity of Sandvik Corporation, right? But Sandvik, it's a huge global company, and they're into a lot of different things. They continue to grow in a lot of ways. But in the world of CNC machining, Sandvik Coromant is more than just tooling, right? So can you just define for us real quickly kind of what are some of the areas where they're bringing value to American manufacturers?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a manufacturer in America ourselves. Like I said, in Mebane, it's not just a technical center. We have production of our inserted end mills and drills, what we call soft metal, right? So the steel portions of those bodies, and then the carbide itself is pressed down in Westminster. So we need to look at manufacturing from our perspective. So what are things that we need? Tool vending, right? So we support a company, TDM is a product that we provide that allows for on-floor tool vending to allow you to job cost and figure out where tools are being used by who and how many on what
And this
job.
also prevents, like all the 1/4-inch drills from winding up in the same guy's toolbox and nobody else in the shop can find one.
Believe it or not, I was in a shop the other day that they have a bring an insert, get an insert policy.
Oh, really?
This is a massive shop, hundreds of on-the-floor employees, but if they want to get a new insert, they have to bring it back to the tool crib, and the tool crib will look at it, see what it is, and they will give you one back.
No more squirreling it away.
Yeah, no more packs out on the floor. It's like, wow.
Yeah, that's
right?
great.
So there's things like that. We have projects teams that are dedicated for essentially customer turnkeys or custom tool design. We also do like a payment per part type program where we'll take and we'll analyze how your parts are being made and kind of guarantee a tool spend based on production values. We do machine monitoring. We have on-tool monitoring. We want to be not just a tooling company, but a manufacturing support company. Like you said, it's about solutions, right?
It's everything. Yeah.
And that's the best part of my job. I don't go in and talk about carbide to people. I go and sit down and we look at manufacturing, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be inside the CNC machine. That's the problem, right? It might be outside of that. In fact, it's typically not inside the machine. 2 projects that we're working on right now of huge importance from the customer are setup time related, right? And that's a huge advantage of the Coromant Capto system is the changing of a Capto turning head is in the 15 to 30 second range, depending on the employee, where the changing of an insert screw is in the 1.5 to 2 minute range.
If you don't drop it.
Yeah, or lose the screw somewhere or grab the wrong wrench, right?
Yeah.
So customers are just looking at doing that because they're realizing they're losing so much time with the door open. And shop floor rates have gone through the roof in the last 3 to 5 years. It's insane what customers tell me their shop rates are. So if they think they can save 2 minutes every couple hours, they're willing to do it.
Yep, that's right. And for anybody listening, if you live in an automotive world, for example, you know what that value of the door
Yes.
open time is. I mean, a lot of automotive companies will tell us, hey, every second that I'm not running equates to this much money. And it's a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
People that don't live in the automotive world might not know that some people are literally measuring the cost of their business in seconds, and they know what that dollar value is. But why don't you further define what you do for Sandvik Coromant? Because again, if I'm in a customer's shoes listening to this, I'm like, so what? What's the value to me as an end user? I think the way Sandvik Coromant deploys you as a technical resource, and your whole purpose in life is generating solutions and value for your customer base, right? It's like you're on the ultimate problem-solving mission every day.
Yeah, effectively. So I'm an application specialist for Sandvik Coromant in the local area, and my goal is really just to help develop a customer relationship and understand where their pain points are in production. We bring in test tools to help them process things. Like I said, I'll process jobs over at your facility or at our facility at our tech center. It's more about having the conversation and seeing what they need, more so than trying to provide them the cheapest carbide on the market, right? That's not what we do. It's not what Sandvik Coromant's ever done. It's always been about how do we solve the problems that the manufacturing world faces, right? And so in some cases, it's innovate new tools. A few years ago, we came out with the Y-axis parting, prime turning, right? And at the time this airs, it'll probably be like another day, but it's in a few days, you'll see D10, which is the latest innovation we have for not inserted drilling, but exchangeable head drills, right? So, but the 10 stands for 10 times D. So they're 10 times
sure.
length to diameter drills that don't need a pilot drill, right? That's unique, right? That also solves a large problem that you see, especially in aerospace manifold applications, right? You have to run very deep holes, but you have to do lots of them, and you don't want to go through a pilot drill, do a tool change, run another drill, right? It just complicates things more. So.
Yep. And so the technology is actually changing. Traditionally, you would need a center drill for all those things. Well, today, that's actually counterproductive. But unless somebody's breaking away from their shop and going to learn about what's out there and how to apply it,
or
we'd still be center drilling everything just because that's what we were taught to do.
Right, and unless somebody shows up and asks you why, you would never consider it, right? I was at a facility the other day where they were putting a spot drill and then running a carbide drill and pecking it. And I asked them, well, why are you doing that? I said, well, that's how we put drills in. Said, well, that's not the way that drill likes to run. Do you feel like it should live longer than it does, right? And it never dawned on them that the old ways were actually causing them harm.
Yeah. So the answer in that case was basically, this is the way we've always done it, right? Which is the death knell in manufacturing. I got to tell my favorite dumb story, though, when you talk about this is the way we've always done it. My father used to tell me this joke about a mother's teaching her daughter how to cook the Thanksgiving ham at holiday season, and so she's like, you do this, you do that, and then you cut the end of the ham off, and you put it in the pan and put it in the oven. And she says, Mom, why do you cut the end of the ham off? And she said, I don't know. My mother just taught me that. So then they call her mom, say, hey, why do we cut the end of the ham off? She said, I don't know. That's how my mom taught me. So they called great-grandma in the nursing home, and they said, hey, why did we cut the end of the ham off all those years? And she said, because my pan was too short.
Right.
But
nobody used that pan in 50 years.
No, but you just keep doing it, and you don't ask why.
Yeah.
All right, so your job is sort of a technical support role and really just having people bring you problems and challenges, and you working either inside of your company or with partners like Okuma to find solutions. When you go do that, you wear this certain cloak, right? Tell us, because we all see the Sandvik Coromant representatives out in the world and they're wearing this thing, but I never really knew what the true meaning was until you put a finer point on it for me.
I honestly don't wear my yellow coat into customers. I think they would appreciate it if they do. But I mean, it is iconic in the manufacturing world.
Iconic, for sure.
When people see that, especially at trade shows, that's typically where we wear it. it's like a beacon. Well, there's somebody there that has some technical expertise that I can go have a conversation with. And it's going to be an honest conversation about how do we do things. Typically, I don't even talk about products, right? It's about a process. It's about what is it in a way of doing things that will lead to success more so than, oh, well, we have this available to you, right? That it's kind of shallow too, right? And I'm sure you've encountered that being in the real working world for a little while. Somebody just, well, I've got the latest and greatest, you need to use it, right? That's not what.
There's always more to it than that. All right. So what you're telling the world though is if you're at a show or you're at an event and you see somebody in a yellow coat, you need to go dump all your tooling questions, problems, concerns on that person.
Yeah.
Because the reason they're wearing the yellow coat is because it's a beacon to say, hey, I can help you with some of this stuff, right? Lay it on me and we'll figure it out.
They are a technical resource at your disposal.
Yep.
They really are. That's what it signifies inside the organization. It's not just cool branding. It is, this guy has worked at this, understands these, and, we think about some of our, I'm fortunate enough to work with some just bona fide geniuses, right? They just truly are. They've designed some amazing, fantastic tools and solutions for people. And that's what it points to, is those.
Fantastic. I was privileged to know one of those geniuses before he retired, but there was a gentleman working for Sandvik Coromant, and his job was to take care of Okuma as an OEM partner, which meant that whenever a test cut, a project, a challenge got brought to Okuma, Richard was probably the first guy we called to help us in that endeavor, because Richard showed up at Okuma in Charlotte every day. I mean, we might as well have given him his own parking space. And in fact, Jim King, who's the president, CEO, COO of Okuma, likes to joke that when he first came there 13, 15 years ago, something like that, and it was his mission to shake every hand of every employee in the company and introduce himself. So he's chasing this guy down through the shop there, and he's hollering at him. He's like, hey, nice to meet you. What department do you work in? He said, I don't work here. And Jim King says, well, I see you every day. What do you mean? It was Richard from Sandvik Coromant, because he was just that dedicated to Okuma's success, to our customers' success, all those things. So I think that sets Sandvik Coromant apart in so many ways.
Yeah, Richard Howard definitely was a standard.
He was the legend. Still the benchmark against
It's
which
a pretty
a lot of things
mark
are still
too.
measured. But Richard, if you're out there, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So give me another success story, if you've got one, where a customer calls you in. Maybe you do or you don't wear the yellow coat, but he says, hey, I've got this problem and I'm banging my head against the wall to try to find a solution or to gain efficiencies or whatever. And how do you, what was it and how did you solve it?
Well, not too long ago, we were working with a customer around here doing some casting projects, and they were using standard turret lathes to machine some parts, and they then had a fixture on a machining center that took 2 parts, and the machining center was outpacing their lathes significantly, right? So they kept coming to us saying, hey, how do we go faster? How do we go faster? How do we go faster? And we really pushed all our inserts to the limit of the process, right? It's like, look, you guys are going to be in here changing them every other day or every other minute, right? So you're exhausting yourself here. You really need to think about how you process the part. And they're like, yeah, well, we're production's going to double in a few years. We need to do better than this, and we just don't want to.
All right, so let me make sure I'm understanding. They're pushing their current machines and their current tooling to the limit, right?
Yeah.
It's like you've reached terminal velocity on this.
Yeah.
So if you're going to gain efficiencies, you've got to kind of look at the whole process and maybe do something totally differently, because you just said the customer says that production's going to double at some point, right? So that was the thing that was
right.
driving them
scared,
forward. Yeah.
Saying, oh God, how are we going to meet those numbers, right? And again, they were just doing things the way they've always done it. And then the conversation of a 2 turret lathe came up. They're like, wait, what would that do? Well, now we can put 2 tools in the cut at one time. We can start doing certain things at different times, and we can reduce the overall cycle. And through that conversation, they've actually invested in new machines, right? And started redeveloping their processes around using multiple turrets, and now their lathes are way outpacing their mills, right? So,
Wow, so they flipped everything around.
yeah. So instead of having to buy a second machine to do the match, they just found a smarter machine.
Yep. And that's entirely plausible where, you think, okay, if I've got 4 machines now and they're old, they're outdated, I can't push them any harder, I got to buy 4 to replace them. Well, chances are you can buy 3 to replace them or 2 to replace them and be as productive or more, either because technology's better today, or maybe you totally flip to a different process.
Right.
And now that cap on your productivity has been taken off. So I'm gonna ask a silly question here. When you suggested, was it you that suggested the dual turret thing? Had they ever seen that, heard that? Did they know it existed, or was that kind of like something from Mars?
No, it was, what do you mean?
All right, so you're the Sandvik Coromant rep, but you're making, you get, thankfully in both of our jobs, we get to go in shops all over the country every year, so we kind of get to see a lot of everything. But for people working in the 4 walls of their own shop, they don't get that privilege all the time, right? So you're not a machine tool representative, you're a tooling Sandvik Coromant representative, but you're coming to them saying, hey, this other machine platform would actually open the doors to productivity for you, and they hadn't heard about it. You help teach them about it. You do some demonstrations, and now they've got multiple 2-turret lathes where they've got 2 tools in the cut, and their lathes are outpacing their mills. Pretty fantastic.
Yeah, because it's not about tooling, right? It's about what is the problem and how do we come up with a solution.
Yeah, or maybe the problem is often not what you think it is, right? It's exhibiting itself in the form of tool life, tool wear, cycle time, whatever, but the root problem could be something else.
Exactly, that's a symptom, right?
Yeah, and again, if your head's focused on productivity and you just see what's in front of you, you think it's a tooling problem. Well, it's actually not.
Especially when you're being told, hey, demands must be met, they must be met, right? Yeah. So it's not necessarily the customer, it's nobody's fault, but it makes sense as to why the customer's not looking outside the box, right? The box is overwhelming. So
overwhelming is the right way to state that, for sure. I don't envy them a lot of times.
No, not at all.
So a couple things about that, though. Number one, they brought you in and you pitched this harebrained idea and they caught on to it, right? They said, okay, let's learn about it. So that's cool. I commend the shops that take the time. We've already talked about this. They go to open house events. They go to regional trade shows. They have relationships with tooling companies, machine tool builders, local distributors. This is like, to me, those relationships are like oxygen for your business. You can't breathe without oxygen. A business, especially a manufacturing company, can't be as competitive as possible without those relationships, without kind of what's the latest, greatest, help me solve my problem, so on and so forth. There's a lot of shops. I know one in particular, it looks and feels the same today as it did 15 years ago, because they're like, hey, we got to make parts. We don't have time for that stuff. Well, they're still cutting the end of the ham off, you know what I mean? They're still doing it the same way just because, and it's to their detriment. But it's just, am I going to make that investment of time or not?
We see it almost annually. Yeah, we develop new grades all the time, right? Whether it's specific to steel or general purpose, milling or turning. And we tell the customers, hey, we've made a grade improvement, so please let us come in and test it with you and tune it to your process. And then, nah. Yeah. And they put the new one in and they're like, well, something changed. Yeah. We're like, we've been telling you for a year, it's changed. We need to run this speed and, leave the feeds alone or change something in some way to refine it for your process. And then it works. And man. Yep. Why didn't we do this sooner?
Well, and if it works one time, maybe we're all inclined to listen a little closer the next time you come and say, hey, check this out, because you helped me the first time. So I'm also continuing to think about something I heard a customer say within the last 30 days. Shop owner who just opened a huge expansion. His business is booming, it's growing, and he's going to fill a facility with CNC machines, but you also have to fill it with operators in most cases. So he says to his local Okuma sales rep, I cannot believe what I have to pay machine operators and much less a shop manager, shop foreman type of person. He's like, it's just insane. And it's almost unbelievable. But he said, I came to the realization this weekend that I'm going to have to spend that money no matter what. And he looks at his salesman, his Okuma salesman. He says, I'd rather spend it with you. And the salesman's like, well, what do you mean exactly? And he says, well, here's how I figure it. I either have to hire these operators and managers at these costs, and then I got to invest in training them for 6 months. And then maybe we can come up with some good processes, good parts, all that stuff. It's a little bit of an open-ended risk, but there's a lot of dollars attached to it. He says, or I could come to, in this case, a provider like Morris South as a local Okuma distributor, and I could work with you and purchase from you a machine tool, work holding, tooling. You could do the part programming. We could define the whole process, automation, basically a big turnkey solution that the builder, the tooling provider, the distributor all work together on. So yes, there's a cost associated with it, but in this scenario, when that machine shows up on its floor, for all intents and purposes, it should be ready to run parts. He basically said, I either have to pay for scenario A or B. I would rather pay for B. So as we grow into an environment where manufacturing is more sophisticated, you can push the tools harder, you're getting all these great CAD/CAM softwares and capabilities. Automation is changing everything. We got to have perfect processes now, and then when we automate it, now chip control and chip management becomes an issue because you're running overnight. All I'm saying is all this stuff puts, it's like trial by fire. You know, how good are our solutions when we push them to the limit and then we automate them? And so customer can either try to figure all that stuff out on his own, or he can work with somebody that he knows and trusts and come up with a turnkey solution. That's the value I think you and I both want to bring to American manufacturing right now.
Absolutely, right? I mean, that's we got to all figure it out together somehow.
Yep.
And our facility's fantastic. It's open to the public to tour, but talk about high mix, low volume, automated manufacturing, right? And we use many of our own tools, and even Capto's a work holding, but Vericut, right? All the machine operators have Vericut viewers at their seat with TDM tooling, machining insights type stuff, all running on the machine so that we can see where everything is in production, right? I mean, that's one of the big advantages that I believe we have, is that we do this every day, right? We know we are in the customer's shoes every day because it's what we do.
Yeah, you're literally in their shops every day.
Yeah.
And you're making your own parts
right.
at your headquarters every day.
Yeah.
Sandvik Coromant, although they're one of the premier tooling companies in the world for sure, I think they do as much as anybody to really propel ideas and innovation forward. So there's always new things coming across the horizon. What are some of the things that you're most excited about? You mentioned some of them earlier in this conversation, but
yeah, certainly the tool changing, machine adapted clamping units. More sensorized tools are coming at us with, our infamous silent tools, right? The extended boring bars. Personally, I'm a details guy, so one of the thing that I like the best is in our CoreCut 2 platform. They've come up with different pressing technology to reduce the amount of flash when they press an insert, so you get a sharper edge right off the press, and it's just a higher quality insert. So there's less that has to be done to it, but you get a better cut with a non-ground insert. That to me, but now that the word grind comes out, we've started with barrel mills and conical barrel mills, right? As soon as this Coropack comes out here in the beginning of March, they'll be available for customers to buy, which I know they've been asking for a very long time.
Okay. And the machine adapted clamping units that you mentioned earlier, so just so we're clear, typically machining centers, even multitasking lathes that it's a lathe machine base, but then it's got a milling spindle up top. Those all have automatic tool changers in them. So you can have 40, 60, 80, 100, 300 tools, whatever. Basically, tool storage and being able to change out tools, especially in an automated environment, is no big deal because you get this automatic tool changer as part of the machine. Turret lathes are a little trickier because typically you get 12 turret stations, and if you want to change a tool, especially a live tool, on a turret station, you got to get in there and break the bolts loose and do it yourself. So that's not really conducive to automation necessarily when you've got a turret lathe, and oftentimes you need a turret for those turning intensive kind of operations. So the machine adapted clamping unit is where we can use a robot to change out tools in a turret using a direct capto connection that goes straight into the face of the turret.
Yeah,
right?
so you guys have developed the turret with the hydraulics through it, and then the block bolts on like a standard bolt, or a standard block bolts on a turret lathe, and now the clamping unit itself has the hydraulic piston in it to clamp and unclamp the capto head.
Yep.
So all that can be fired through M code while a robot's there holding on to it, and it can be happening at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. So I would agree with you. That's one of the more exciting things about being able to sort of break the barrier of the way we've always had to do it, based on technological limitations in some case.
And I think that's definitely a place where the customer pushed both us and you.
Well, amen to that. So we were talking earlier, we've talked a lot about how the machine tool builders push the tooling companies and vice versa. Sometimes our customers push us, and that's a good thing. I mean, sometimes our end users push us to the point of being uncomfortable, like, really, you want to do that? I don't know if we can do that, but can't never could either.
Yeah.
So this is a great success story. It was like, yeah, I think we can do that.
Yeah.
And now there's a product coming to market for both Okuma and for Sandvik Coromant that's going to have implications across, hundreds of manufacturing companies. A lot of people could benefit from this. If somebody doesn't have a relationship with Sandvik Coromant, but if they hear this or they see something online and they're like, man, I should call those people, what would you recommend is the best way for them to get in touch with the right people?
Well, the easiest way to do it is website, right? Log on to the website, and there's chat help there. There's also, you type in your zip code, it'll give you a list of distributors. If you even send a request to technical support, right? If you're in Salisbury and you send a request to technical support, it will filter its way back down to your local guy, right?
Okay.
And eventually you'll get a call. Like I said, if it's in Salisbury, you'll get a call from me, right? It's just it's the hub for all the communication. I even go to our website daily. Right?
Okay. So I'm going to recommend they log on and say, I would like to speak to somebody in a yellow coat.
Yeah.
And Sandvik Coromant would know what to do with that request, right? Okay.
Because as long as you give them your general address, right?
And then say where you're at.
Yeah.
That's great. Yep. And it's especially for a technical guy like you to show up at the door of a shop and say, how can I help you? That's way different than a salesman knocking on the door saying, hey, are you going to buy anything today? I think we both believe that if we show up and we can bring solutions to our customers' problems, they're probably going to buy something somewhere along the way, right?
Yeah.
But our goal is to show up and talk about solutions, not talk about what we think we could sell.
And you and I both know we learn so much from our customers, so it's a privilege to be invited into their house anyways, right? So it's a learning opportunity for me to go call on them, right? So it's genuinely appreciated that, okay, we get an opportunity to see what you're doing, to learn from you, like Rocky did for us today. That's fantastic, and it's amazing that people do it.
Yep. I couldn't have said that any better myself, so that's perfect. Thank you, Chris. All right, well, we've got a new guest joining us from Sandvik Coromant. We had Chris Peluso earlier. He's the application specialist. One of the most brilliant engineers that I know, and I've known a lot of good ones, plus I've known Chris for almost 10 years now, and he's the best in the business. But we've upgraded now, and we've got Miss Kyla Sapp joining us also from Sandvik Coromant. Tell us about what you do, Kyla.
Yeah, so I'm the PR specialist for Sandvik Coromant. My markets are North and South America, so what we refer to as Sales Area Americas. And basically I handle all of our external communications, if there's press releases or earned media opportunities, podcast features.
Yeah.
I help a lot of our executives prepare for speaking engagements like panel discussions or keynote speaker opportunities, things like that. And then I collaborate really closely with our marketing team as well throughout North and South America.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So whatever message it is that Sandvik Coromant is trying to project out there to the customer base, you help facilitate and figure out ways to get that message across.
Yeah.
And while you're doing that all across the Western Hemisphere, you live and are based here in Western North Carolina, just down the road from where we're at here at RCR, right? So that's pretty cool also.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining us. And Chris mentioned a concept earlier that made me want to jump up out of my seat when I heard it earlier today, which was manufacturing wellness. And just the term alone paints this picture of, is my manufacturing operation healthy? If I was an end user needing to make parts, I want to be more, I want to do it better than my competitor down the street. But also, it's kind of like the game of golf where you just want to be better than you were yesterday. You're just competing against yourself out there on the golf course. In manufacturing, you're kind of competing against yourself to say, can I be better today than I was tomorrow? And if I'm not better today, what are the blind spots that are holding me back? So this concept of manufacturing wellness sort of crystallizes that and gives people a mirror to reflect in about how healthy they may or may not be, right? So tell us a little bit more about where that came from.
Absolutely. Manufacturing wellness is a term that we coined just over a year ago. And basically what we've done is created these 8 habits that make up the concept of manufacturing wellness. And manufacturing wellness as a whole is kind of our holistic approach to creating a safer and more efficient, production environment on the shop floor. So there's 3 out of the 8 habits that we can kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive in today.
At the end of this, we'll give people the website to where you can go online and find the manufacturing wellness assessment themselves. But as we talk about Kyla's top 3, what are they?
It's embrace technology, and then automation or automate for success, and then developing your people.
Okay. And so you and I talked about this a little earlier, but I would probably agree that these are some of the top things facing manufacturers today, because embracing technology is really a lot of what Chris was talking about earlier. Do they invest in open house events, trade shows? Do they have relationships with vendors and distributors that can help teach them and make them better? You don't have to change what you're doing as a manufacturer, but at least know what your options are. And through these relationships, you can understand what the emerging technologies are. Maybe some of them blow your mind and change the game, and maybe others you're like, hey, that's cool to learn about. I'll tuck that away for a rainy day. It just starts with knowing kind of what the options are out there, I think.
Yeah.
And then in terms of automation, though, automation's kind of the buzzword right now, and rightly so. I'm a big proponent of automation, but here's the thing. Please, please, please don't automate a bad process. If you automate a bad process, you are just multiplying your problems, and there's no good outcome from that. So if you get step 1 right, about embracing the technology and really perfecting what you're doing, if you've got a perfect process, now you're ready to automate it. Now you're multiplying perfection, you're multiplying good things in your manufacturing company. And plus, there's no question that people are going to have to automate to remain competitive. I had a friend the other day point out to me, like, let's say it was the mid to late 70s maybe, where CNC machines really started to rise to become as prominent or maybe more prominent than manual machines. And he was like, think about the fork in the road for those people back in the 70s. They could either choose to stay with manual machines or go CNC. And now you look back 40, 50 years later, there's no more manual machine shops. At least not as many as there were, right? So the people that chose CNC are the ones that kind of won that. They picked the right answer. Today, the same fork exists for automation. Am I going to automate or not? Chances are 20, 30, 40 years from now, the ones that automate are the ones that are still going to be here and be thriving, I think. So, but if you're going to embrace technology, if you're going to automate, that means you got to have the people to do all those things. So the workforce development, recruiting, retention, that is the infinite game. That is the never-ending challenge. But I would be very excited that we have opportunities to recruit in this industry that maybe didn't exist. How many people's kids at home are playing with 3D printers?
Yep.
You and I weren't
Nope.
when we were kids, but today that's like, that should make people say, hey, manufacturing's pretty cool. Maybe I want to pursue that in college or after high school or whatever. Automation is drawing people in. Nice, clean, pristine shop environments.
Yeah.
Like you got the SpaceXs and the Teslas of the world and all these Blue Origin, these names in the industry that are glamorous and what they manufacture is glamorous. RCR is a great example too. It's the quintessential you can eat off the floor kind of shop. Who wouldn't want to work there?
Right.
But, and then once you get them in the door, how are we going to train them and mentor them and keep them here and keep them growing and challenged and all those things? If you're a shop owner or a shop manager and you're not thinking about those things, could be one of the blind spots. And this evaluation could help show people that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So where can we go to find that?
Yeah, so Sandvik Coromant actually has a manufacturing wellness landing page. So if you just look up Sandvik Coromant manufacturing wellness or just manufacturing wellness as a concept, or if you go to our webpage, there should be a section on manufacturing wellness. It does a deep dive into each of the 8 habits, and you can learn more. You can, like we mentioned before, take that test to see what your manufacturing wellness score is, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So.
And how long do you think the test takes, just give or take?
Oh gosh.
Or how many questions is
it depends on what kind of a test taker you are.
How efficient are you?
Yeah, how efficient are you?
And I also understand correctly that it'll give you a score. It'll give you some way to gauge where you are relative to other people who have taken a similar test, right?
That's right.
So you get a little bit of a grade. It's like, none of us like getting our grades back in school, but
get to see where you fall.
The data doesn't lie a lot of times either. So
exactly.
Very cool. Well, I hope people will go check that out. Google manufacturing wellness, Sandvik Coromant, you'll find it. And the name of the game is, can we all be better than we were yesterday? I hope that's all of our goals. So together we can figure that out.
Yep.
All right. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining the Shop Miners podcast. See you next time.